All right. First thing I'm gonna do. I'm assuming I want to find some kind of gambling establishment that caters to a higher class than the docks.
Okay, if you want, you could. So the based on what y'all have talked about since you've been in town, and what you know, you could either try hitting up there. If you go over to this area of town, over by the fortified manors area, you can find a lot more high class bars where you're more likely to run into young nobles who have too much money and are very bored at night, but during the day it's pretty pleasant. Um, the only thing you have to worry about is if you look notably poor, then you might run into some issues with the guards there. There's a kind of like a hunter's establishment just a little bit out of town, like a hunting lodge sort of thing. And then beyond that, you could try hitting up just parts of the city you haven't visited before.
I'll try the Hunter's Lodge first. That seems like my best bet.
Okay, it's technically out of town, but it's like maybe a 5. Like you could see it when you walk out the gate, and it's a very easy walk.
All right, I'm gonna head over there, and I'm gonna look to people who are a bit older in age and ask around about who is really into like horse gambling, like for races and things.
All right, as you approach the lodge, the first thing you notice is that it is kind of a circular area because there is a large set of basically not cages, but I'd almost describe them more as racks in the center, many of which have creatures hanging from them that seem to have been killed in recent hunts. Like you see some large boars, you see a stag, you see a particularly large creature that you're not super familiar with. There are tons of guys moving around, most of which are very heavily armed. In some way or another, some have guns. Most of them have bows of some sort. You see what are you can figure out pretty easily to be huntsmen, and there are a number of horses at various stables. But the thing that really draws your attention, though, is that when you walk in, you do see that there are a lot of there's basically a big bulletin board, like this big old hunk of wood in the center of the square in front of the racks that has a bunch of pieces of paper on it, some of which have like vague drawings. Of course, you can't read, so you can't figure out what they say, but they've all been pinned up there, and some of them look fairly identical to each other. But as you look around the actual place, you do see that while people are going about their business and no one seems to really pay you any mind, there is one building that does kind of draw your attention because the front door of it, which is open now, but it's very obvious from the doorway in the front door that there is dried blood all over it, and you can see various servants working to try and clean up what of the mess they can.
I will walk over there, and in my best watch impression, what's all this then? That's a lot of blood.
Do you want to go for? See, if you're wanting to try and come off as a member of the Watch, you can either go for.
Well, I am a member of a watch.
Oh, that's true. You can go for either gossip or intimidation, or leadership if you have that. Okay. One of the young women who is got a bucket and a rag essentially to try and help her efforts looks up and says, "You didn't hear the." She goes, "Oh, hello, watchman," and they all kind of nod. Though you see one of the younger men gives you a pretty quizzical look at hearing the word watchman, but seeing a halfling.
I point to my Bogenhofen badge.
Uh,
Out of town.
he continues to give you even a more quizzical look as you are quite a little ways from home. But the young woman says, "Oh, there was a incident yesterday. Some of the hunters they had a bad hunt.
Oh, that's a shame.
Whatever they were trying to get got all of them instead. It was very messy."
Okay, That's a bit more of a shame than I thought it was. Here. I will look around warily.
Uh, she nods and she says, "Well, no, they were out in the forest over yonder," and she points in the direction of the Hager Crib Mountains.
Bad place over there. Good thing they made it back, though, eh?
She sort of winces and says, "Well, none of them made it, so to speak. They're with more now."
Ah, well. Do you happen to know what they were hunting? I've heard there's some vicious things up in there, bloodthirsty fey folk.
The young man immediately quips in. He goes, "I heard it was a jabberslythe," and everyone else groans and rolls their eyes. But the young woman kind of slaps at him with the rag, and he sort of dances a little bit out of reach. And she says, "It wasn't no darn hideous beast. It was a stag, though a big one. It was horrible. Looked like they'd all been impaled by a bunch of knives or spears. Their horses didn't come back neither."
That's... Oh. Can stacks do that?
Uh,
I thought they were docile little things that ran around the woods, obviously about.
there's an older man who's kind of standing off to the side, and he raises an eyebrow and says, "You've never seen a great stag, have you? They're not little, and they're certainly not docile."
Not except on me dinner plate, and I will give him a big grin.
He shakes his head and says, "Most people don't get the honor of seeing a great stag, and rumor has it this one's all white. Been bringing in hunters for miles. That pelt of it, I mean, the meat alone would fetch a high price based on the size I've heard about this thing, but the pelt would be worth a small fortune."
Whew, poor lads running off to hunt something like that. How many of them did it get? I will look warily at all the blood.
He sort of thinks you see him start counting on his fingers, but when he gets to the fourth finger, he pauses for a really long time, and he goes, "A good group of them." And one of the younger woman nods as she says, "8. They had
Eight.
hounds
Whew.
too. Nothing came back. The hounds didn't come back. Their horses didn't come back, and they all barely managed to stumble their way to where the watch found them and brought them here. We have a surgeon on staff normally, but he wasn't able to save any of them. Most of them bled out by the time they got here."
That sounds like some kind of demon stag thing. I mean, kill 8 people, eat their horses and dogs?
The man laughs and says, "More like," he goes, "I doubt it ate them. More than likely it was, they cornered it and it fought for its life, or maybe they entered its territory. Might be some big old buck that's got a family it's defending. Who knows? Whatever it is, though, the more people it kills, the more it's worth if somebody brings it in."
God, it's Warhammer. Hunting in Warhammer is like fucking terrifying.
Oh, well, I hope not. I'm sure some of the nobles will be all over it once they hear about this challenge.
He nods, says, "Oh, yes. Rumor has it in town, if people are looking for a well-paying job, you can get decent pay as a scout trying to locate the beast. They're paying real top dollar right now for people who are willing to go out looking for it first. That way you find it, and then they get to claim all the credit. Assuming, of course, you survive once you find the damn thing."
That sounds like quite a risk.
The young woman nods as she dips the red cloth back into the bucket to try and get it sort of back to a normal color before scraping at the wood floor again. She looks up. She says, "Oh, what brings you all the way from Bogenhofen, Master Halfling?"
Oh, I was gonna look around for a friend who wants to find a great horse, and I thought, you know what, the best kind of people who know what good horses are that run about in the wild would be the hunters here, who know a thing or two about a decent horse, not one that can only run on a straight road, as it were.
She laughs and says, well, you might be able to find a fast one, but all the horses here have been bought up by people preparing for the next big hunt. Maybe you could find something in town, but everything here is gone. Unless you're looking for advice, then maybe you could get one of the hunters to help you out, but they tend to be a little... let's just say they are a little bit of an arrogant lot.
Oh, well, they got reason to be arrogant. I'm just a wee halfling. You wouldn't happen to one who may have been, a bit more agreeable in discussing things with people? And point me in his direction.
They all kind of look at each other, thinking, and then the younger man points at what clearly is some kind of, it's more of a bar than anything, and he goes, maybe hit up the ones that are drunker in there. If you stroke their ego, they'll usually give you tips when you're cleaning the tables. Maybe you can get something out of them.
Okay, don't like that turn of phrase, but yeah, ought to give it a try. Thank you very much. Good luck with that blood there. Stains very badly.
Okay.
I shall head to yonder establishment.
Okay. You enter in, barely needing to push open the. They essentially have it's kind of like a folding door, but you're able to almost too easily slip between them, even being only half open due to your small size. And inside, because it's the middle of the day, there is a haze of smoke in the room from tons of people who are smoking on various items. Some have pipes, some have simply rolled up certain kinds of paper with the proper tobacco ingredients in it. It's definitely an interesting mix. And you can see from the clothing of these guys that there are people from all over the place in here. You see colors that mark huntsmen from all the way up in Hockland. You see men with the symbol of the white wolf of Midland painted or like emblazoned on their the back of their vests. You see people that have even come from as far as Nordland Ostermark, based on their colors and iconography on some of their weapons or trinkets that they carry on them. But almost all of them seem to be fairly well-off individuals based on the quality of their clothing. A lot of them have very fancy types of jewelry or hats, and many of them are talking fairly softly, at respectable levels of tone, which is surprising for a bar in a town in the Empire. But there seems to be a lot of there's kind of a somber mood about the place.
Sotek, I want to do a perception test to see which one has the best food in front of them.
Okay. Unfortunately, due to your small stature, you cannot see most of what people have on their tables or on the bars. But, and your sense of smell is being horribly interrupted by all the tobacco, which in and of itself is not bad to a halfling. But it's pretty impossible for you to tell. But if you had to take a guess, it seems like there's two gentlemen sitting at the bar talking to one another, one of which is bearing the traditional colors of a professional huntsman from Hockland, and the other seeming to be the man has a fairly mixed set of clothing with a lot of various leathers and a long overcoat and a very wide-brimmed hat, and it's very difficult to tell where he may be from because he doesn't have any obvious colors, or he looks very practically dressed especially for colder weather.
Practically dressed for colder weather. He doesn't have, say, pistols at his hip or a blunderbuss, correct?
Not that you can see, no.
Okay, I pretend he's not a witch hunter and approach them.
All right, you do so, and the man in the wide-brimmed hat looks down at you and says, our drinks have been already topped off, thank you.
Oh, well, I was thinking of maybe it might be nice to have a second pair of drinks to match the first.
Uh,
I'm Wrist Fumblefoot, and I'd like to make your acquaintance if you don't mind.
he scowls at you, and the other man turns and looks down at you with a raised eyebrow and says, Uh, I'm afraid we're not interested in purchasing anything. I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of a conversation.
Oh, no, wasn't. I wouldn't dream of trying to peddle something to you. I am in need of great assistance in terms of knowledge, and I believe that you two are the best suited for helping me figure out how I should go about a task I've been assigned.
All right.
I want to make a charm test.
Okay. Okay. The man from Hockland kind of laughs, and he actually moves over a stool and slaps his hand across the one he was sitting on and says, "Well, it's not often we're joined by a halfling for one of our afternoon chats. Come on up." Though you notice the man in the
Thank you
white
very
brimmed
kindly.
hat does not seem severely enthused by your presence.
I will hop up, gesture to the barkeep and hold up 2 fingers to say, get them another set of drinks.
All right, he obliges and brings them over another set of drinks, which thoroughly pleases the man on your left from Hockland. But the gentleman in the white brimmed hat kind of eyes it and just takes a very slow, methodical sip of his own drink while watching you.
I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation. Could I ask what it's about, or if it's personal?
The man from Hockland immediately opens his mouth, but the gentleman on your right says, "That's none of your business."
Just wanted to make sure before I interrupted whether I should wait for you to finish.
The gentleman to your left holds out his hand and says, "I'm Adelbrand. Nice to meet you."
A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Adelbrand. I'm Wrist Fumblefoot.
He nods and says, "So you said, and what advice, I think you mentioned, was it you're looking for?"
Well, a friend of mine has given their promise to help a young noble find himself a new horse.
He raises an eyebrow and says, is your friend some kind of horse farrier then?"
No, she's someone he thought would be good at finding a particularly, how do you say strong in horseman terms?
They both squint at you, and Adelbrand goes, "He sent a woman to find a strong horse?"
I kind of wave my hand dismissively. There's extenuating circumstances. Mainly, I think, grief.
They both slowly nod, and Adelbrand says, "Okay, and so what does that have to do with us?"
Well, you're obviously a hunts marshal from, and I will gesture to him. I don't know who the mysterious friend is, and I don't think he really would care for me to pry, so I won't give my estimation of his talent and skill, but you are huntsman? You should be familiar with how to tell if a horse is good or not, and who may have, say, horses of pedigree.
The man with the hat spits vaguely in your direction, though he does deliberately miss you. And Adelbrand gives him a rude look before turning his attention back to you, and he says, "You flatter me, Master Halfling. I'm a huntsman, yes, but nowhere near the rank of hunts marshal. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say I'm the most experienced with horses, but I am familiar with where people tend to acquire them should we be aiming to go on a hunt. You said you're looking for a horse for a noble?"
Yes, he's. I will look kind of abashedly. He's Bretonian, so I'm pretty sure he's kind of picky about horses. So I didn't want to go and mess things up.
The guy from Hockland chuckles, and the man from the wide brimmed hat gets a very annoyed look on his face and takes another drink. And Adelbrand goes, okay, when you say a strong horse, and he's Bretonnian, and he sent a one. Can we just be clear exactly what he's wanting to use this horse for? There are some interesting rumors about Bretonnians where I'm from.
Ah, so we were with him when we were going off through the woods up, and I gesture foolishly up, and I will gesture towards the Hager cribs. When we came across this giant big bear, and I just go into the story of him charging this, like, extra large sized bear. And how his horse basically fought the bear for a while till the bear killed it.
Adelbrand gets very interested in the story. The man behind you finishes his drink, and he stares down at the one you provided for like a good 30 seconds before he shrugs and starts pounding that one away. Adelbrand nods enthusiastically and says, "What a riveting tale! Unfortunate he didn't have any proper archers with him to soften it up before he charged it. Sounds like a typical Bretonnian. Way too brave. Thick in the head they are."
Sir Raymond Perquin is a bit too brave for his own good, I would say.
He nods and says, "Well, if you're looking for that kind of steed, you're gonna need a destrier, almost for sure. Maybe a warhorse if you can afford it." And he kind of thinks for a minute and says, "If you head over by the noble district, you know, that where that big wall is to keep all the filth out, you can find there is just on the edge of town, right at the very edge, so the smell doesn't bother too many decent folk. You should be able to find someone who will be selling something along those lines. I can't promise as to the quality or anything like that. I'm not a horse person myself much. I prefer to trek on foot. But I do know that the man who hired me for the upcoming hunt got some steeds from there himself, especially when they sold out here."
Ah, that sounds great. Would it be improper of me to ask of the man who hired you? I'd like to talk to him about what he found there. If he has the time to spare for one as low as me.
He rolls his eyes and says, "Unfortunately, I think he would consider himself much too busy attending to himself or some unfortunate barmaid. I wouldn't count your odds very high of being able to get a conversation in with him. He might be upstairs, though."
Ah, well, I won't do that then. I hate to impose, and I will give the hatted man a wink.
He notes your wink but doesn't respond and just takes another drink. And Adelbrand shakes his head and says, "Forgive my friend here. He's very particular about the people he enjoys discussing with."
Oh, well, I'll get out from under your feet then. You both have a great day.
The man in the hat turns away from you back to the bar, and the barkeep does look at you expectantly and holds up 4 fingers.
I will pass him the 4 shillings I assume he wants.
Not shillings.
Oh, crowns.
Nope, not crowns.
Brass.
There you go.
Okay, I thought they were drinking fancy drinks.
Nah, they're pretty low end.
All right, yeah, then I will toss him the 4 pennies.
All right, he sweeps it off the table and gives you a nod.
All right, I will head out, and I'm going to head over on the long walk to the other side of the town to get to the walled area and all those nobles.
All right, we're going to check in with Vertstat and Verve real quick. All right, so you two get back to the Harpy's Talon. What do you do upon your arrival?
I sit Vertstat down next to the fireplace, the hearth, and say, "Wait here."
Thank you. Could you get me a blanket? I'm a little chilly.
I will glare at you for a moment. I am not your mother.
Fine.
But I will gather one for you.
Thank you.
You'll hear me, like, walking away muttering, "What would my people think of me now?" And yes, I will grab you a blanket
So nice.
Oh, wonderful.
and begin preparing his tincture.
All right, it's very very easy to prepare, and you're able to acquire water basically for free, and you can use the hearth to essentially get it boiled. And thanks to the way he tied off the dosages, you're very easily able to prepare a proper amount of medication for Vertstat to drink.
Okay. So I imagine she hands it to me.
Yes, I will pass it over.
So as it's steaming, I take a tentative sip. What does it taste like?
Not great. Not great at all. It tastes like it tastes like someone took a bunch of really bitter medicines and slapped them together with no regard for the person who actually has to consume it.
Okay. So I'll
I
take
will.
one. Oh, sorry.
I'll note your face and kind of smirk, and I will wander over to the innkeep and say, "Do you have any honey?"
The somewhat greasy man wiping off some uh mugs from earlier raises an eyebrow and he says, "Do you take this for some kind of fancy inn? We ain't got no honey."
Really? None.
Uh, he goes, "Not this
How
time of
sad.
year."
I will walk back over to Verstat and say, "Well, I tried. Bottoms up."
Thank you. I thought you said you weren't my mother. And I will finish the medicine.
Roll an endurance check. It's very easy, so you get plus 60.
Okay. Fortune point.
Okay. Okay, you manage after a brief cough while drinking that nearly results in a bad situation. You manage to force yourself to drink it all down without any serious issue.
Wrong pipe. Wrong pipe.
That being said, while y'all are hanging out by the hearth, there are a couple other individuals around. You see, there is a group of uh, fairly well hidden, like cloaked individuals sitting in one of the corners, muttering among themselves. There's a couple that's getting a little too lovey-dovey over against one of the walls next to the stairs that lead up to the rooms. And then there is a single man who seems to be reading some kind of yellowed piece of paper over by the bar. And then, of course, there's the actual innkeeper. Just as a... so you know.
Okay.
So you said there are cloaked or hidden individuals or stealthy-looking individuals?
They are very well concealed for just chilling out in an inn in the middle of the day.
Do they? If I like note them out of the side of like corner of my eye, are they watching us or are they just
No.
conversing among themselves?
Nope, they seem to be just talking among themselves.
All right. I will approach the barkeep when I'm feeling a little stronger in my legs.
Okay.
I will say, so I've just come from the doctor, and funny thing, have any other people staying at this inn, have they had problems with maybe bed bugs or some sort of vermin?
He raises an eyebrow and he kind of like almost looks around conspiratorially before leaning forward, and he goes, "No. Why do you ask?"
But as I said, sir, I just came from the doctor. We can keep this between us. but I do need to know if I'm going to continue feeling this way if I stay here.
He looks. The look on his face seems to be somewhere between irritation and very mild surprise. And he says, "You're staying on the second floor, right?"
Yes.
Then no, you shouldn't be having any issues.
Of course. I'm sorry to impose like that. It must have been from the last inn we stayed in.
Uh, he kind of narrows his eyes and says, "Which room are you in again?"
I tell him my room.
He nods slowly as if making some kind of mental note to himself.
And
It's going to cleanse it with fire once you're done using it.
And I will walk back to the hearth and the chair I was sitting in.
Okay,
Can I go up and inspect his room?
sure.
Is your belongings there, Aztec? First that?
Let's see. No, everything's pretty much on me.
Like, what would you leave in your room if you would leave anything in there?
Hopefully,
your backpack?
nothing. This is not a very secure inn.
Yeah, there's not gonna be anything in there.
Okay, well, I'll go in and I want to inspect the room, the window, and, the rafters, everything.
Okay, roll a perception check.